All right, magic makers. I have Renee Fitton here, and we are talking all about fasting. She works for a company named Prolon, and it's really interesting because probably I'm going to say 5 or 6 years ago, I was at a fitness trade show and they had a booth there, and I happened to be speaking with someone. And I literally, if I look over on my shelf, I have the Prolon book. So it started as a book. The guy was talking to me about all the things, and he's like, "Oh, you need to like get the program, la la la." Yes, the longevity diet. I have that book. And he talked to me all about it. I'm gonna admit it here. I didn't read it, but I have it on my shelf. And then here we are 10 years later, and Renee is on my podcast. So we're going to talk all about intermittent fasting, but how Prolon does it in a different way. So Renee, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And the whole point of today's episode is that you don't have to read the book. We're going to try and jam pack all of the incredible information and decades of science that is there, but do it in a really fun way today over the next little while.
Awesome. But it was really funny because I think this was like right when, the whispers of intermittent fasting started to come out, like before it kind of like blew up to what it is today. And so when I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta really have this person on the show. So like
Absolutely.
what
Well, I will
inspired
say too that like the whispers is it certainly feels new, but it is probably the oldest nutrition protocol that there is because we evolved to thrive during
right.
fasting. It feels new, but it's actually very, very old. So
Yeah. So like what inspired Prolon to dive into the world of intermittent fasting?
great question. So it actually started with a guy named Dr. Walter Longo. He's actually the author of that book that you have on your shelf. And he is an incredible researcher, with the top longevity researcher out there today. And he was faced with a problem, recognizing that water fasting is super beneficial, but also recognizing that there's no very few people that want to do water fasting, especially for long periods of time, understandably, and also that there's safety concerns, and especially in vulnerable populations. So he really started looking into this when he had patients and oncology patients, so cancer patients, that needed to benefit from this, but nobody was willing to put them on fasting protocols. So
Right.
this really started our exploration into how we can get the benefits of water only fasting, but in an easier, safer, more effective way.
Awesome. And I like that because I feel like people, nowadays it's people fasting for all over the place. But I feel like people are like doing it in an unsafe way. It's more in a way that like I can go harder, I can go longer without really thinking, is this beneficial?
Absolutely. And especially for women, I know I'm assuming we're going to have a lot of women listening to this, especially if you're perimenopause, menopausal years. There is a right way to
Yeah.
fast. And so you have to be so gentle with your body.
Mm,
You need to be mindful that while fasting is incredible, it is also a stress to the body. It's something called a hormetic stress. So it's a positive stress, but it is a stress nonetheless. So if you're doing it too long, anything of any good thing done too much can be a bad thing.
for the people in the back, did you hear that? Too much of a good thing can sometimes be a bad thing.
Yeah. Yes. So important. And I mean, like that is pervasive across so many things,
Oh
right?
God,
So
yeah.
like, fasting is just one of those examples. But I mean, if you eat too many carrots, you can literally turn orange. Okay. So this is something that they taught me in master's nutrition. They're like, be careful. Too much beta carotene turns you orange. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing.
That happened to a friend of mine. She was getting ready for a fitness competition, and her coach at the time was like, "You can have unlimited carrots," and he was pretty much like, feeding her like nothing. So she literally like would eat. She's like, I was eating like 3 to 4 bags of carrots a day, and she was like, I was kind of looking at my skin, and it just had this like weird coloring, and she was like, I didn't understand. Like I was just like, what's happening? Am I like getting sick? And it was because she was eating so many freaking carrots.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's, our bodies are so complex. and they know what they need, and variety turns out is really important, and balance
Mm.
is really important, and so many things, come into play to really create a holistically healthy lifestyle. And so find the things that work for you, but also recognize that you can do too much of a good thing. So anyway, when it comes to fasting, that certainly is the case. And I'm really excited to kind of sink our teeth into, let's talk about intermittent fasting and what's the best ways to do
Right.
intermittent fasting, but also what about prolonged fasting? I think there's not enough conversation about doing fasts longer than 16 hours, longer than 24 hours. What does that mean, and how can we get there?
Right. So how do like there's so many protocols out there nowadays. How does Prolon stand out in like the sea of protocols and methods and so forth?
So there's two things I think that are really important to call out that make Prolon and unique. One is fasting mimicking concept,
Mm,
which is that we're not doing water only. We're adding in nutrition every single day, every meal of the day. So you are actually eating food. We are essentially tricking your body into thinking you're in a fasted state,
mm,
but you're eating food every day. And that is based off of essentially the concept that our cells have a different definition than our eyes and our regular dictionary. We have a very different definition. And our cells look at the very specific nutrients and the specific amounts, as opposed to just, did we put food in our mouth or did we not put food in our mouth?
right, right.
So that is piece number one. The other piece is that what Prolon is most known for is a 5-day fasting mimicking diet. And so it is a 5-day fasting program. And it is very important that we recognize why we're doing 5 days. Because sure, there are benefits to daily fasts of 14, 16, even 12 hours of fasting a day can be beneficial. But there's one thing that you will not get with these shorter fasts, and that is this profound level of cellular cleanup, something
Mm,
that we call autophagy. Some people may be familiar with that term, but for those who aren't, it's essentially, I like to consider it a vacuum cleaner for our cells. It is just this beautiful spring cleaning that we can allow our bodies to go through, where it cleans up broken, misfolded organelles, things in our cells that just aren't working the way that we want them to. And unfortunately, can't really get away from that. That happens as we age. As we age, our cells start to accumulate junk. It's kind of like our homes. The longer we live in them, the more things end up in our junk drawers. And I don't know a single person who doesn't have at least a junk drawer that just gradually and perpetually gets more and more full. And every now and again, you need to do that spring cleanup. You need to go deep into the drawers. You need to go find the things that you can just throw away. Otherwise, it's going to get hectic and it's just going to get messy. And so our bodies have to do the same thing.
So when we talk about that cell cleanup and the autophagy of the cells, does it also, I know that a lot of the women over 40, inflammation is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So does this kind of cellular cleanup work to get rid of some of that excess inflammation that they may be experiencing?
Great question. Inflammation, it is certainly a buzzword right now because it is so problematic, but it also is so pervasive in so many parts of our body. So
Mm,
cellular inflammation, but also, body inflammation. There's inflammation in so many different ways. It's how you can measure it in so many different ways. So inflammation is kind of I consider it a very broad term.
yeah.
Cellular cleanup certainly will support you in that way, but fasting also supports inflammation in a lot of other ways too. So having excess weight can lead to excess levels of inflammation. Having high blood pressure can lead to high levels of inflammation. So there's so many things that can kind of play into
Mhm.
this bigger picture of inflammation, which is also why so many people have inflammation, because it's so easy to get there,
Right.
unfortunately. So the beauty of fasting is that not only does it have that cellular cleanup, which certainly does have an impact on inflammatory markers in some capacity, but it also tackles a lot of other things that can perpetuate inflammation.
Perfect, perfect. And the thing as I was, going down my Prolon research, what I really liked about it is that there's a system, right? You're not out there being like, do this forever, where I feel like other protocols, there's no beginning and no end. There's no real guidance out there.
Absolutely. I mean, we tried to make it as simple as humanly possible. You don't have to prep. You don't have to do anything after, and you only have to do this 3 times a year, which, by the way, is only 15 days total in 365. That is the goal for you to just maintain that longevity. And not to get too far ahead of myself, but that we've done a lot of studies, but one study that was just published last year was around biological age and seeing how our body and our cells age compared to that number on our birth certificate. And it turns out that we can be older than the number on our birth certificate, but we can also be younger. And certainly we're all trying to go that way.
Right, right.
We want our cells to be younger than our true age. We did a study to measure biological age, and after just 3 cycles, that's the 5 days a month for 3 months in a row, there was a 2.5-year biological age score reversal. That
Oh,
is, in the world of longevity, nearly unheard of to get that type of result with just 15 days of intervention.
wow.
So,
So when I'm lying about my age, so I could, what my normal age lie is, now I can take 2.5 years off of that.
or you can just make yourself feel better and tell yourself it's not a lie. It's real. It's my biological age. You didn't specify.
There it
So,
is. There it is. So yes, yes, yes. All right. So now I'm gonna find my biological age.
yeah,
It might
exactly.
match my lie age. Who knows?
Well, and you know what? Maybe it's even younger than your lie age. Who knows? Like it's pretty incredible with lifestyle changes what you can do to your biological age. So I would urge people. There's so many ways to measure bio age now, and unfortunately, there's no kind of gold standard.
Yeah.
But we certainly have our preference way, which is a way that requires you only to use the stuff that your doctor's already testing. That has been very long time associated with longevity outcomes. It's based off of some NHANES data, which in the world of nutrition speak is kind of like the go-to gold standard
Mm,
data on health and wellness and longevity. And so it's based off of all of that. And you can go online and you can type in pheno age and it will allow you to go just plug in some numbers. You can go find them on, if your doctor is going to be nice and let you have all of your lab values from your last test, you can just go plug in those numbers and it'll spit out your bio age.
I love that. Um, so as you said, so when you said 3 times a year,
Mhm.
is there a specific recommendation of how long you allow between? Because I know my A++ out there girls are like, well, I did it for 5 days and then I came home and I had wine and then I did this and then so I'm gonna do it again. Like,
Yes. Yes. And okay, and we have people that do it a lot more, but I'll remind you, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. We have consistently seen in the research that what we call the refeeding period, which
mm,
is at least 25 days between cycles, is so critical in rebuilding because it's one thing to do a big cleanup and get rid of everything that is a mess, but it's another thing to rebuild because, you know,
mm,
I kind of like to think of it like you have maybe the heat in your house goes down. And so now you have to build a fire in your fireplace, but you don't have any firewood. So you go and you try and you look around and you think, what are the things that matter the least to me that I can throw in this fire so that I can burn and stay warm? And you go and you find the broken down chairs and you find the things that you care the least about until the heat is back on. And it's kind of the same concept of fasting. There's no food. So you go, you kind of go and you hunt down where you can get the food and the energy from the things that matter the least. Now, when you are heat back on or food back in, you need to go replace that chair. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting at a dining room. Well, you're going to be standing at your dining
right.
room table. So it's so critical that refeeding phase to rebuild. You have to have those dining room chairs. You have to have all of those things that you cleared out from that fast. So That's super important to keep in mind. Now, if you are trying to reach a goal, if you know that you have maybe weight to lose, if you feel like completely sluggish, if you know your body needs this reset, then sure, you can do it once a month until you've reached your goal.
Mm,
Usually that is 3, sometimes it's 4. We have a pre-diabetes and diabetes protocol. The diabetes protocol has 6 cycles in a row on
mm,
average. So people do adjust it for their unique needs, and you can do it monthly for longer periods of time. But then after that, once you've reached your goal, really don't push it. Don't do more than every 3 months.
right.
So again, just give your body the break that it needs and the repair that it needs, and the time to rejuvenate after you've done the cleanup.
Perfect. I love and I love that. And so, if someone's listening and, I too am like, I don't know, intermittent fasting. Should I? Should I not? What are some of the top health benefits that can benefit
Okay, well, when it
other than
comes
the
to
cleanup?
yeah, of course. When it comes to prolonged, I'm going to focus on prolonged fasting because we've been going down this path and they are different. Like intermittent
Right.
fasting and prolonged fasting, they have different benefits, and I cannot stress that enough.
Okay.
In terms of prolonged fasting, additional benefits that we're going to see and that we have seen and studied are going to be things, it's really holistic. That's an important thing to note. It is your
Mm.
full body because we're working at the cellular level. So things even like your skin,
Mm.
see improvements in skin hydration, in skin texture, reduction in fine lines. And that's even just after 5 days. I have all of my patients take a picture of their face before they start and on day 6, after they've completed the 5 days. And it's incredible the difference that those 5 days makes, even just to your face. Of course, weight loss. I think a lot of people come to fasting and fasting mimicking for weight loss. But what I like to make a special note when it comes to fasting mimicking for prolonged periods of time is that we have shown time and time again that it is muscle protective. And let me just, I mean, we could spend a whole episode talking about the importance of protecting our muscle. This is important for absolutely everybody as we age. From age 30 to age 50, we lose about 3 to 8% of our muscle mass per decade. And then once we hit 50, it jumps up to 5 to 10%. And unfortunately for women, once we reach menopause, it's even worse. And so muscle protection is key. And unfortunately, even with some of the best diets, we even compared ourselves to the Mediterranean diet and it wasn't able to protect muscle. But you know what did? The fasting mimicking diet. Muscle protection is so key. So if you're losing weight, make sure that it is true fat mass and you're not tapping into that muscle. Fasting
Mm.
mimicking is muscle protective. It's really the only thing that I've been able to find that is super muscle protective thus far, or very well planned diets where you are doing weight bearing exercise with enough protein to support the weight bearing exercise and measuring your muscle mass during that period. But it certainly is a little bit challenging. So that's so critical. And I think one of my favorite parts about this protocol is not just the weight loss, but the type of weight loss where we're seeing it.
And when you say type of weight loss, what type of weight loss are you guys seeing?
So we see it especially in the trunk fat region, that
Mm.
your abdomen, which is also oftentimes the most dangerous. We also see visceral fat being tapped into. That's the fat that's right beside your important organs. And unfortunately, also one of the hardest fat to get rid of. It
Yeah.
really like stick to
Right.
our organs. And so if you lose weight, you're probably not starting at visceral fat. You're probably starting at some of that subcutaneous fat, which is just like the stuff that you can feel when you pinch.
Right.
And while we might not like that, it's
Mm.
not as dangerous as that visceral fat, the stuff surrounding your organs. So we've been able to show through something called a DEXA scan that can tell you exactly where all the fat is
Yeah,
located
yeah.
and all that good stuff. We've been able to show that we're targeting that as well, and even hepatic fat, which is the liver fat, which unfortunately today also is rampant, the
Mm.
very high level of liver fat.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So now, now I'm like, all right, I'm in. I'm hearing this. I'm hearing this. So one of the things I see the most, and you probably see this because you've been in the business a long time, the
Yeah.
consistency. I do this for 5 days. So maybe it is, can I do this for 5 days? Like, what do you see for the adherence of the Prolon? And then after day 6, this is what I'm always worried about with my clients. It's like, okay, you did this for 5 days, great, rock on with your bad stuff. What happens on day 6, right? Am I
Yes.
like heading to the local 7-Eleven and going, batshit crazy, putting everything in my cart?
Yeah, no, it's such a good question. So let's talk first about adherence. And in terms of what we've seen consistently, about a 95% completion rate with your first 5 day cycle, which is incredible. And I'm
Yeah,
not going to sit here and promise you that this is an easy thing to do. I won't lie to you. I'm going to be transparent. It is still a challenge because it's still about 1,100 calories on that first day, which for most people, that's pretty easy. But then it does drop down to about 750 or so calories for day 2 through 5. So, yes, it's way easier than water only fasting, but it is still a challenge. So, the fact that 95% of people are powering through this is incredible. And you know what? That's a testament to it's knowing that you're just doing it for 5 days. When
right,
somebody tells you, hey, you got to go eat like a bunch of broccoli and you got to eat a salad every day, and you got to do all blah, 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 all this stuff, they're telling you that you're going to have to do that every day for the rest of your life. And that is overwhelming. And it makes you think, sure, maybe I can do this. But then when you get to day 4 or day 5, you're like, man, this kind of sucks. I don't like it. And I
right,
don't think I'm going to be able to do it forever. So why even bother? Because it feels like this all or nothing option. With this, you know that you've got 5 days ahead and you just need to get through those 5. And once you get done the 5, you're going to feel incredible. A lot of people feel incredible on day 4. A lot of people feel incredible on day 5. They're just coasting to the point where a lot of people on day 6 are like, I don't even need to eat anymore, Renee. I'm good. But of course, as we mentioned, brief eating, very important.
right,
But
right.
it's so important. So that is in terms of adherence. In terms of transition, right? So you get through the 5 days, you feel awesome, you're ready to go. Now you might want to celebrate. And I've done this probably about 14 times now. And I one time decided to celebrate by going to have a burger, and I could not regret that anymore. It wasn't cute. It wasn't good. And I will never do it again. Lesson learned. Transition day should be a day where you are celebrating with whole, healthy, plant-based foods. Avoid refined sugars, avoid saturated fat, avoid the stuff that are probably not the best things to pull from your fridge, from your counter, from wherever you're headed. And alcohol, of course. So on that day 6, just take it easy, transition. From there, our studies have consistently been done where there is no guidance on nutrition that you have to do. And 3 months later, after you've done your first 3 cycles, we retest, right? And we see how much of those results were still in. Even if you went back to a regular, and unfortunately in the United States today, the regular diet is not a great one. So even if people were going back to that regular diet, they saw 75% of their results maintained. That is incredible. So if you're just doing this quarterly, which is the
Mm,
recommendation, you hypothetically should be able to maintain those results. They're, yeah, of course, going to decline a little bit as you go further away from your fasting day, but then you just top back up at around the 3 to 4 month mark. Now, imagine if we had done that study and we told people, why don't you make additional healthy lifestyle changes and
right,
nutrition?
right.
I
Yeah.
mean, that can be really impactful. And so in the book, in the longevity diet book, there's also recommendations on how to eat outside of the 5 day. But what I always want to remind people of is that the 5 day was originally designed so that if that was the only thing you did, it would still be beneficial. And that I
Gotcha.
think is a really nice peace of mind to have, is that even if I do nothing else, this is going to give me some really incredible results.
Now, for a lot of people who listen to the show, they are people who work out. So during these 5 days, is it recommended for people to, this is a complete like deload, like no working out, maybe just walks?
hmm Yes, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. So move. I strongly recommend movement. Your body is going through this whole detox. It's cleaning out so much junk. You want to let your body move to get all of it out, right? So hydration and movement is key. But too much movement is an additional stress on our bodies.
Mm,
So my rule of thumb is if you're sweating, you've probably gone too far, but stretch, yoga, light yoga, there's so much yoga these days, just
right.
crazy light
Yeah.
yoga,
Right.
light.
Not going to Bikram 150-degree yoga.
Yes, exactly, which is a whole nother thing. We avoid high extreme temperature environments too, because those are also that hermetic stress. So we don't want to pile hermetic stress upon hermetic stress. We want to try and just focus on this one hermetic stress for these 5 days. And I promise you, at the end of the 5 days, you can go right back to doing
Right.
whatever it is that you may have had to stop. So some other things to be mindful of on the 5 days that you probably are going to have to decrease or stop. Caffeine. We
Mm,
suggest to limit to about 1 cup of coffee a day. Ideally, we suggest that people just exclude it for the 5 days. But if you really need that cup of coffee, which a lot of us do, then you can have about 140 milligrams, which is about 8 ounces, maybe a little bit more, depending on your pod. Um, but that's a big one. And then otherwise, you're really just sticking to the box. Like when it comes to supplements, we have them in the box. So
right.
exclude all of your supplements, except obviously the medications and the supplements that are doctor prescribed that you absolutely need to take. Continue to take those. But for these 5 days, just really stick to this box and all will be fine.
All right. So so for those of you guys who are listening, so Prolon sends you an actual box, a system, if you will. And so what can I expect in the system? I'm sure you've made it idiot proof.
We certainly have tried, although you never know what you're gonna get.
Right. I
But
trust me. I work with the general public too, and you're like, wow, I never thought that. I'm like, all right, note to self.
right. Well, and then sometimes it's also like, man, why didn't we think of that? Like we were silly not to include that guidance. Like, of course,
Yeah.
it's confusing. So, but it is certainly designed that way where you get kind of one of these meal cards here where it tells you exactly what to have. And not only is it on a meal card that tells you breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, it's individually boxed by day. So
Oh,
you
perfect.
get yeah, it's so seamless. You get the big box, but within the big box are 5 days boxes. So each day you take out your individual day box. I dump mine out. I look at my menu and I kind of line it up. I think about how I want to organize my day. Throughout your day, you can kind of move things around. You just don't want to swap between days because
Gotcha.
in that box, you want to keep in that box for that day. But yeah, it's pretty seamless. You're getting foods that you can expect. So most people will start their day with the L bar, which is a nut-based bar. It's got things like macadamias, almonds. It tastes incredible. It's got even a little bit of honey. It's got a tad of sweetness in there too. Then usually people are going to transition to their morning snacks. So that could be things like we call them kale crackers, but it's not just leafy green dried
Mm,
kale. It's actually crackers that are made with sesame seeds and kale and nuts. And they're so good. People always ask me if I can sneak them some packs because we don't sell them separately. We have things like olives as snacks. And for anybody that's an olive hater, try these olives and then you tell me if you still hate olives because they are life changing. It's and then we have then lunches and dinners that are going to be soups, and there's different flavors throughout every day, so you're getting some variety in those soups. And then even at the end of the day, there'll be something like a chocolate crisp. So you are really getting all sorts of things throughout the day, not to mention the supplements. We have herbal teas in there. So lots of things to consume from beginning to end of the day.
Perfect. And so if someone's, doing this for the first time, is there any advice that you would give to someone?
Oh, so much. I mean, one thing that Prolon offers that is so kind, honestly, is free group coaching.
Ah,
So Yeah. So if you purchase your box, you can then go and you can sign up for group coaching. They're done every single week. They start on a Sunday. They get you fully set up with all your questions answered. There's a live coach, and you're
Mm,
doing this with a team. And fasting together is light years easier than fasting alone. Even if everybody you're fasting with is across the world, it really is super helpful. So I would say take advantage of those group coaching sessions and get that support. That would be number one. Other than that is stay busy. Don't think that, oh man, I'm going to be fasting, I should cancel all my plans. I should make sure that I am sitting on my couch. I'm going to be exhausted. You'd be surprised. One, you have oftentimes a lot of people actually see bursts of energy and
mm.
they're really, energized and clear. Um, and also being kind of stationary is usually where you start thinking about food.
Right.
So
So I think about food, boredom kicks in, and then you're like, all right, screw it. I'll start again in another few weeks.
exactly. My most successful fasts are always the ones where I have a busy work week. I'm chatting on podcasts. I'm just like sitting at my computer, just super busy. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, it's like I still have two extra soups because I just totally forgot. And
Right.
that makes it a lot easier because then when you are hungry, you have something ready to go.
Right. I love that. And so earlier in the show, we touched on the whole hormones, and for many women, we've been told fasting can impact women in perimenopause. How is this different? Is it because that we're actually given some nutrients versus non-nutrients? Is that the difference that you guys have?
So there's so much to think about when we're talking about fasting and especially fasting mimicking in perimenopause and menopause. So one thing that I would say is especially important is that giving the nutrition and giving the calories and keeping your metabolism going is certainly important. When so people always talk about the importance of breakfast, and
Mm,
that's for a reason. When we wake up, our stress hormone cortisol goes up, and when we eat, it actually helps bring it down. And so, by giving our bodies some of that food and that nutrition, we are allowing our bodies to stay in that healthy metabolic kind of circadian rhythm, which means, the rhythm that our bodies follow from a day 24-hour clock. So that is really important. And that's why I love fasting mimicking, especially for women and especially in perimenopause and menopause, is that it kind of helps us stay in that circadian rhythm by giving us that nutrition.
mm,
Possibly the most important piece though is again, and like I said, I was going to say it many times, is that muscle protection.
yeah.
It's so critical when unfortunately we reach perimenopause and menopause, the muscle loss is going to be significant. And then the last piece of the puzzle is also in perimenopause and in menopause, because of the declines in estrogen, we also are at higher risk of insulin insensitivity,
Mm.
and we're also at higher risk of cardiovascular disease. So all these things kind of start getting thrown at us all at once. And it's really, and thankfully, there's a way to combat that. And it's with healthy nutrition and good exercise and all of those things. So it can be combated. It's just not as easy as it would have been had estrogen levels and progesterone levels stayed where they were. So you can fight back with, again, like doing things like fasting. So fasting and fasting mimicking diets, there's a lot of research on insulin sensitivity and improving insulin sensitivity so that your body's better able to regulate blood sugar, which also ties into weight management. So anyway, it's all connected. But the beauty is that because fasting targets so many things, it's working from the root cause. It's able to help so many of the verticals that are changing when our hormonal systems are also changing.
And I like that because one of the biggest knocks on fasting for women over 40 is that breakfast piece, is the fact that, you know, women are like, but I go to the gym at 5 a.m. So I'm just gonna go to the gym because that's what I do. And you're just, and the thought of like breaking my fast, like that, like the amount of questions that I hear about, like, is this breaking fast? Like, if you have to ask that bleeping question, stop.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's not for you. Like if you have to
Yeah.
continually ask that question, stop.
Yeah.
But I like that it's like, one, you make it, dummy proof. Like you're like, eat this.
Yeah.
The end. Move on to the next one.
Exactly. And so I would say, I mean, there's a couple things. One is that if you're doing prolonged fasting, you're only doing that like 3, 4 times a year. That's
Right.
great because then the rest of the days you can eat a really healthy, whole food, plant-based diet. You have breakfast, you have like kind of a really healthy, even circadian pattern because you can do that even with just a 12-hour fast. I think oftentimes we like to push ourselves and say like, oh, well, if fasting is good, then I should be fasting 16, 18. I have people that are trying to fast 20 hours every single day. I mean, you don't have to do that. And in fact, it's actually extra stress on your body. Do your prolonged fasts, your 5-day fasts a few times a year. And then if you don't have a lot of weight to lose, just do 12-hour fasting. That's still great.
Yes.
Have your breakfast and then stop eating. If you have your breakfast at 7 a.m., stop eating by 7 p.m. That is, by the way, a lot more than what a lot of Americans are doing.
Yeah,
That
agreed.
and so good for your body and gets you right in that circadian pattern. You can shorten it and do 14 hours of fasting, especially if you have weight to lose, but know that you don't have to do that for the rest of your life. Do it and
Mm.
reach your goal and then go to a 12-hour. Then if you really want to push it, sure, 16, but don't do that for very long because it's still a stress on your body.
Yeah, I think it's that we're brought up in the more is better, right? Like if 12 is great, 16 must be the best. And
Exactly.
and if I can go 24, rock on. So I feel that what you're saying, it makes it approachable versus me trying to like Google my way to a fast.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's approachable, but the best part is that it's also true. So
Right.
it's like I'm not like making this like super easy because I want you to do it. It just conveniently it is easier than you think it is, you know? Like there's the fasting mimicking diet certainly is the beautiful way that has been created to make this super super easy, but it is easier than you think. You don't have to think about it as this like scary dark hole that you have no idea what's going on over there. Try it even just for one day. And I think you'll be really impressed at how easy it is. Prolon does make 1-day resets so that
Mm,
people give it a try. Or also, in between your 5-day cycles, you just need a quick reset, but you don't want to do the full 5 days or you know that your body isn't ready for another 5 days. Just do one. We're
yeah.
here to support you through your journey.
And for anyone who's listening who might have any dietary restrictions such as being gluten or vegan, are there those kind of accommodations? I'm assuming yes.
Yes, it is. It is a fully plant-based program. There is honey. So if you don't have honey as a vegan, unfortunately, that would be it wouldn't be something that we can adjust, but otherwise entirely plant-based. It is also soy-free, dairy-free, gluten-free. So it is pretty approachable for pretty much everybody. The
Right.
only people that have to watch out are people who have nut allergies.
Mm,
And there's unfortunately no way to adjust it for that. But outside of that, it is very accessible for pretty much anybody.
awesome. I love everything that we've talked about. Now, is there anything, Prolon's been, like I said, I got the book probably about 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
Prolon's been doing this a while. So they're not new in the game. So that's great. Now, is fasting mimicking only thing that you're sticking to? You talk about you have these like great tasting products. Are they ever going to be kind of pulled out as a standalone product?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So there is the L bar that's in the 5-day kit. People were always like, man, I really love that idea and I love that concept. And for every day, like sure, you're telling me what to do for 15 to 20 days a year, but what about all the other days?
Mm,
Help me out. And so we created the fasting bar. The fasting bar is clinically shown not to spike your blood sugar and not to drop your ketones, which is that fat burning um, compound that is released when you're burning fat. So it's essentially showing that you're not breaking that fast with this bar. I love this for my friends that are telling me, no, Renee, like I really don't like to have breakfast and I want to do my morning fast.
hmm
Okay, fine. If you're going to do it that way, have the fasting bar in the morning, and at least it won't technically break your fast, but at least it will still give you nutrition
Right.
as well.
Some foods
And
on board.
exactly. And then we also, I like it for my people who are trying to shift their fasting windows earlier in the day. They want to have their breakfast, but they know that they get like that 10 p.m., 9 p.m. hunger pang.
Mm,
And now you can have this. It's a really healthy solution to allow you to stay in that fasting window without breaking it, but still giving you that satiation or that feeling of hunger or non-hunger. So I really like that. And then the other one that I have to call out, especially because we've been talking about perimenopause and menopause, is our L-protein. It is a plant-based protein powder, and there's so many protein powders out there today,
mm,
and people are all about protein. This is so unique. It is the only one that I've been able to find that is taking into consideration that protein actually activates pro-aging pathways. No
mm.
one's talking about this. I mean, some people are, because there's a lot of people who are saying, if you hear them, they're saying too much protein can be a bad thing. Like excessive amounts of
Yeah.
protein can actually be problematic. And it's because excessive proteins actually trigger excessive growth pathways, which actually, as we age, growing is actually just growing us to our end and not, necessarily a positive growth. So it's a really happy balance. And so we have to find these ways to get in healthy amounts of protein without activating these pro-aging pathways. And that is the specific amino acid composition that is made up in that L protein. Not only does it taste great, but it doesn't activate those pro-aging pathways like pretty much every other protein powder on the market.
Awesome. And is that also in the like vegan, gluten-free, soy-free?
Yes, yes, super, super clean. It also even has a little bit of olive oil in there, and has 21 vitamins and minerals from organic fresh fruits and vegetables.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's pretty beautiful protein powder. In fact, the production of the protein powder was delayed by about 9 months because we couldn't find a manufacturer that wouldn't put in a bunch of these ingredients that are meant to be there for stability, and they can actually put them in and not write them on the label.
Ah,
And we were like, we don't want all this silica and all this junk that you're putting in everybody else's protein. We want a clean protein. Took us forever to find that. And we had to work so hard and pay a lot more money to make that happen. But that is the quality that we put into every single product that we produce, because we want to put our money where our mouth is.
I absolutely love that. Now, if there's anyone who's listening and they're like, yeah, this seems intriguing because I'm now like, all right, should have read the book 10 years ago. Um, I'm wondering if what's like one thing if someone's on the fence, like, oh my God, like, should I not? Like, what's one thing that would like push them onto the Prolon side?
I think, I mean, if the biological age of 2.5 years isn't enough for you, one thing that I would say is that this has been consistently shown to be an incredible Kickstarter for a lot of
Mm.
other things. So this is actually
Ah,
a study that we did. I'll talk about this study that was done in patients with type 2 diabetes. So patients with type 2 diabetes were given the 5-day fasting mimicking program once a month for 6 months in a row. And then the control group that didn't get the fasting mimicking diet got healthy diet. They got all of the support that they needed for type 2 diabetes, but not the fasting mimicking diet. The people who did the fasting mimicking diet, they were not told to exercise more. They weren't told to they were just focusing on the fasting mimicking diet. And yet they increased their physical activity by 6 hours a week by the time the protocol was done. The
hmm.
other group decreased their physical activity by 4 hours a week. This is with nobody telling them anything about physical activity, yet there was this motivation in the fasting mimicking diet group to go and work out and to do it like at a pretty significant rate. And I like to think that that is because of a couple of things. One, once you finish this program, just 5 days, you feel empowered. You feel so proud of yourself for accomplishing it. You feel clean. You feel rejuvenated. You feel energized.
Hmm.
And that certainly is going to set you up for a lot more benefit down the line, even outside of this. So even if the 5 day wasn't enough to kind of push you over the edge, the feeling that you're going to have after really should.
Yeah, no, and I feel most people, you know, if you're starting even exercise or anything, most people, the start isn't what gets you. It's the afterglow that you're like, wow, like, no one skips to a workout, but
Yeah.
no one's like, oh, I regret doing that. No one ever says that after a workout. They're like, yeah, I didn't want to come, but I'm glad now after it's all over, I'm glad that it was done. So I'm feeling the same way after um the 5 days. I think for most of us, I don't think most people really know what it feels like to feel good.
Yeah. And it's so true. And you don't know what you're missing until you have it.
Right. And so now I'm going to be like, chasing to like feel that good feeling without it being like it's not a drink, it's not a drug. It's just like I just tapped into an energy source in my body that I'm like, wow, I didn't know that was inside.
Yeah, I know. And this is the beauty of our bodies is that it has so much power and so much our bodies are so dang smart. It's out of this world.
Yeah.
The amount of millennia that have gone into creating all of this is pretty cool and what has come of it is incredible. So if you just let your body do the work and you kind of get out of the way, it's pretty cool what it can do.
That you said the optimal word, get out of the way. I think so many of us are trying to like hustle
Mhm.
and grind and control without just being like, pause for one hot second and just be like, what do you need, body? Because it'll tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it absolutely will. And that's again like back to that question of like how often should you do this? Listen to your body. It will tell you. It'll say I need this or you know what? I think you did it one too many times. Let's take a bit of a pause for the next, 3 to 4.
Right. I love that. And so where can people find out more about you and about Prolon?
Absolutely. So if you are looking to learn more about Prolon, go to prolonlife.com. That's Prolon life.com. And you'll find everything you need to know there. You can also check us out on Instagram at Prolon, Prolon. If you want to come check me out on Instagram, I am Fitton Nutrition. That's Fitton Nutrition. And I'd love to see you there and chat with you guys there.
And I ask everyone before I close every episode, what's one thing that makes you feel magical?
Oh man. Okay, so I think one thing that when it comes to longevity as a longevity dietitian that people kind of overlook is this aspect of community. So
Mm.
I'm not going to just stop there. I'm not going to say community. That's too easy of an answer. Where do I find my community? This is where I get real nerdy. Escape rooms. Yes, I did say it. Escape rooms. I
Really?
love them. Just I have an app that I track my escape rooms on, and I did 39 escape rooms in 2024. So
Wow.
yeah, I just magical is maybe not even the word to describe how I feel when I am in there. It's so fun because they transport you into an entirely new world. You get to use your brain to escape. You get to spend time with people that you love. Ideally, is the people that you bring into this escape room. Although, hey, I mean, you do whatever you want. You bring whoever
Right.
you
Bring some
want.
rando. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you'll build a relationship real quick because you start to see what other people, how they think, and it allows you to actually build stronger connections with the people that you love because you are starting to see how they think and how they look at things differently. It makes you realize that we all look at the world in a very different way, and it actually can be really beneficial when we come together to, anyway, I'm getting deep for an escape room, but that's my thing that I find magical.
No, I think that like you said, you're like, oh, it's probably not gonna be something you ever heard, but you're right. Like there's like I think a couple here in Boston, but that is like it, but it like allows you to be like use your brain. It allows you just like another way to connect with people that you would never connect with, like
Yeah.
and make you learn how to work with people to figure out how to get the hell out of here.
Exactly, exactly. And I will say the escape rooms of today are light years different. If you've done one like even 5 years ago, I'd say do another one. Because they're so cool, they're so fun. And just a little plug for my app that I am a big fan of that tells you where the escape rooms are. It's called Morty. And you said you have a couple in Boston. I promise you have like 25 in Boston. You have no idea how pervasive these things are.
But it's funny because I think it's like I know of one because someone mentioned it, and then like someone else mentioned another one. So I was like, that's why I'm like, I know there's at least two. But you're right. If
Yeah.
you're like, I went that up, I'm like, oh, there's one there and there and
Yeah.
there and there.
Yeah, yeah, no, and they're so cool. And you know, you can do it with two people. Like I go with my husband all the time, just us two, and we just like, claw our way out of there as best we can, but it's super fun.
Perfect. Well, folks, I hope that, this has been a very great conversation. We talked about fasting, we talked about fasting mimicking, we talked about the very vast differences between the two and how like too much of a good thing is a too much of a good thing. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time today. And guys, if you have any questions, p- please reach out to her, reach out to Prolon. This seems like a very safe program to at least try for a day and see how you feel. And then you could always try that 5 days. And if it five doesn't work for you, guess what? You did 5 days and it didn't work. The end. Move on.
Yeah, the worst things have happened.
Yes, exactly. I've spent 5 days doing worse things. So,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I promise you, you'll feel significantly better doing this than probably anything else for 5 days. So,
or an escape room. You decide.
yeah. Yeah. Ooh, 5 days of escape rooms. Whoo, don't get me
Yeah.
excited.
You're like, that's a vacation.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And guys, please follow her. This has been a great conversation. And if you've learned one thing, do us a favor, screenshot it and tag us on the socials. We love to hear anything you learned today.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me.